Exactly. So, I mean, what we have here is we have a real haunted artifact, but for some reason he felt the need to lie about, you know,
The
some of
origins.
the origins, like where this all came from. So me and Ryan got to thinking, like, why would he do that? Like, what would be his motivation? And so we started kind of putting together these different points, and
Okay.
and so I mean, looking back at a story at the furniture store, when you have the street worker or who comes up and he's pointing down to the basement window and saying, "Hey, you got to be careful. Someone's going to get killed down there." And he mentioned it was like 8 to 10 people in black garb, and they're going around a circle. And I mean, anyone who's ever done any research into the occult and stuff like that, I mean, that's rituals that are often associated with satanic rituals and just the dark arts. Like you're not going to see Christians walking around in black stuff, doing these circular rituals and stuff like that. And what came to mind then is that, okay, well, Kevin's the only one that got access to this basement, right? So this isn't a physical entity. Whatever this thing is, this to me looks more like a residual haunting, right? Which is almost like a recording of an event on tape. It's just replaying
Yeah.
itself,
Just an
right?
Like a
echo of the
videotape. And that's
past.
why, typically granite has an amazing ability to absorb energy. Again, why we can wear little watches with granite and they'll run your watch is more energy is coming out. And they say that like Gettysburg stuff, sites that are over granite absorb, and that's why these reenactments keep coming back. It's almost like the intensity of the emotion is so absorbed in the ground that it's like playing it. No one thinks if I pop in a video and say, here's the movie, and people go, oh, it's like it's a VCR, it's a video for crying out loud. Of course we can see it, but it's
Yeah,
like, do you realize that's just a little bit of iron metallic on plastic, and yet you're seeing color and people and language, and it's as if it's happening. And nobody freaks out if they see a movie on a strip of plastic with iron filings. But if we stand out on a war site, a battleground, and a reenactment appears, we're freaked out.
yeah. So I mean, we have this what I believe to be a residual haunting happening, and we kind of debated like what this was, and like I mean, this could actually be the ritual that was first enacted to conjure the Dybbuk to begin with into the box. I mean, this could be a reenactment of the origin of how this came to be, and then we have to look at Ethel, who was Havala, who was into this stuff, and if they indeed did want to fight the Nazis, I mean, this could be what they did is they did this ritual. We're going to trap this Dybbuk in this box, and this is going to be our fuel to fight the Nazis, right? So it would make sense why Kevin would lie about these kinds of things. Obviously, he didn't give his grandmother's real name because we know that Havala is Ethel, right? And so why would he lie? Well, we have this story of Sophie, like, and we know they're fictional and stuff like that, but it all comes from somewhere real. It has to. So we're saying, what if, I mean, they believe that whatever they did caused this great tragedy to the Jews, right? This ritual, whatever it is that they did all these years ago, was they believe they're responsible. So Kevin's close with he was close with his grandma. So I mean, he doesn't want anyone to know that his grandma could have ties into an event that, again, like the Holocaust, right? I mean, and I know this sounds really out there, but I mean, when you look at all these different angles, I mean, you have what appears to be a dark ritual. We know that Kevin lied about the origins of the box, but the box is haunted, and we have I mean, there's nothing good that came from the box. You
Which is
know,
why the mother hates it.
yeah. So I mean,
There is no doubt she hates it. She never saw any opportunity for publicity, money, or Hollywood. Every conversation with me was get rid of it, don't talk about it. And it's like, this doesn't sound like someone who wants their child, if this was something that was a money maker or a ploy to garner attention, the last thing she's going to be doing is telling you to kill it, you
yeah.
know?
And this is the kicker. This is the thing that kind of ties it all up. So you have these dreams, and this is Ethel. You're dreaming of Ethel, and it's only with the box, right? And other people have reported the same thing. So it almost sounds as if Ethel herself was trapped inside the box. Now,
Interesting.
yeah, I mean, what if, I mean, Ethel, she dies. What if, you got this family that supposedly is into some kind of rituals, right? I mean, they're doing seance and stuff. I mean, they're,
Well, they said at least Ethel was. And then again, half say yes and half say no and half say kind of. It's like she didn't do anything. She did everything. She was somewhere in the middle. It probably was ineffective. No, those are the three statements from three siblings. She was into it up to her neck. She would never touched it. She dabbled in it and she thought she did stuff, but she
but
was convincing herself. So that's kind of in between. It's like, yeah, she did it, but it probably didn't work.
but we know that Kevin was close to her, and there's something bizarre with the box. He lied about the origin. So, I mean, does it sound
Well, it's
plausible?
all speculation. He will stick to his story till the very end. So I
Oh,
don't,
for sure. I know. This is speculation. This is just a kind of
but I agree with you. Something isn't right.
yeah. And I'm just thinking like the fact that I mean you're able to identify, within these dreams the character. I mean, who's behind this whole story.
At least to me, that's who it was.
Yeah. So it almost suggests that yeah, she would be in the box.
So,
Sorry.
well, I was just going to say, in terms of authenticity, when you were doing the part in the book about the club that Kevin had worked as a security guard at and talking
Right.
to the different club members, and there came this question. The hair became a big focal point. Did you ever actually test the blonde hair or the black hair to see if it was indeed organic or synthetic or human at all?
Right. And that's the thing is, particularly the black hair, which is supposed to be from, one of the workers. He and I
Shaggy.
actually are Shaggy. His name's Christian, but Shaggy and I do actually, we're Facebook friends, I guess. And I did kind of know, though it's been a few years, I did invite him to send me a few follicles but the thing is, everyone has convinced me his hair, without a doubt, is brown. And there
And that
is
hair
that
was
hair
not.
is as black. I mean, that hair is as black as almost has a blue cast to
So
it.
black it's blue.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it really is. And so there's no way that's Shaggy's hair. So
And
yeah.
then, as far as the, because I believe that some of the comments that some of the other club workers made was that the hair was from a doll. The blonde hair was from a doll.
Right. That it might be from that thing. And again, that doesn't necessarily. What I'm saying is in a ritual sense, personal items. That doesn't necessarily negate or make. You know what I'm saying is it
It
could
doesn't.
be
Yeah,
from.
it
What
may
I'm
not
saying is,
even matter.
if you go to eBay, most of the creepy spiritual things are dolls. So
Yes.
And another thing that you mentioned that I found interesting because it's a phenomenon that's in the paranormal field and it's not specific. It's been mentioned, and of course, what I'm speaking of is shadow people. Now, I believe you mentioned
right.
seeing these is almost like human shaped, right? Like they almost look human, but they don't have features. They're shadow, and
Just a silhouette.
Right. And they really are. They're not. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. They're not really figure shaped. They're more blobby shaped. And I have to say, I've seen my son and I witnessed those, and they make no sense. And I've literally sat at my computer in a room with a fixed light over my head in the nighttime, which means obviously there's no changing light, and literally watched a shadow just kind of float underneath me. It's like, what the heck? And it does startle you because there should be no movement of anything. You're sitting still, and why is there this movement underneath you and floating out the door? And it's a fixed light source.
yeah,
You know?
and Ryan and I have like there's a little different in that. I mean, the ones I've only ever seen it a couple times, but what I've seen appeared to be human shaped, just without features, as if like a solid shadow in a human shape. And Ryan has seen that as well. But I mean, you'll come across these. Are you familiar with the story at the Sherman Ranch?
Not really. But
Skinwalker Ranch.
well, I've heard of skinwalkers, but I guess that's the thing is I'm not. Again, I don't usually do the paranormal.
Well, you're deep into it now. um,
are trying to get out.
They won't let me leave.
Yeah. These voices in my head, they won't leave me alone.
Well, I mean,
But I know I know what you're saying because I did actually do a little because I kept hearing about skinwalkers. Skinwalkers, like what the heck is that? And so I did hear about the actually being the best documented case of these shadowy figures. That come and go through like portals or time dimensions or who
yeah.
knows what. So
And I just found it interesting, because it's in your story. It's in, I've seen them. Ryan's seen them. It was at the Skinwalker Ranch, and I'm sure like a dozen other, paranormal stories I've come across. And I just, I wonder what its relation is. Like how does it fit into all these different, drastically different stories? So it was an interesting.
well, yeah. Well, just quickly, or just quickly and briefly, some of the things that I've researched. You were talking about the dark arts and dark magic and those kinds of things. And, I've said those words for years without really thinking about what that means. But it was actually the Jewish faith that probably close to 600 or 700 years ago actually had figured out the speed of light. The concept of light's movement and what the speed would be. And the thing about it is, if you believe that somehow this world was created and the first thing was there was light and it was good and everything followed suit, light actually is kind of like we can't get faster than speed of light. So to some degree, it kind of traps us. But if you could go faster than light, where would you be but in darkness? And so when we're talking about the dark art, we're talking about things that are not really of our world because we're in a world of light. And if you could go faster than light, you basically would transverse time and space and be in something else. And that's what's called the dark. But doesn't mean it's necessarily darkness. And so I always thought that was an interesting concept. And I think of it like I think is it the relay wheel where you spin it, you drop in a marble and you're betting. And initially it's going so fast that the ball is nowhere and it's everywhere. But as it slows down, it starts and locks into one spot. You don't know where it is still, but it's still spinning around trapped. And finally, it slows down and you see where you're at. But
That's an amazing analogy.
That is a good analogy.
But you think of that's how light and dark is, that we're trapped in that roulette at the slowest speed. But if you were to speed that wheel up, the ball would fly back out and it would be everywhere. And that's really, to me, the description between dark and lightness is we're trapped in the lightness, so we see less, not more.
It's very interesting that you put it in those terms because, I as a pastime, I spend quite a bit of time reading on, theoretical physics and quantum physics and stuff in that vein.
String theory, all that cool stuff, yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot of really neat things out there. And
now we found the Higgs boson. It really exists, the God particle,
Yeah.
We're truly into a new era. But, that really does sound like, the whole theory of probability waves where, if you throw a ball across a room, it actually travels around every possible point in the universe. But because probability waves cancel each other out, and we interact with the world in a physical way every time we look at something, and we bring everything into reality. It snaps into reality. Other than that, it's everywhere.
Well, and that's why you can take photons. You can't really split a photon, but you can take a beam of light, and you can basically do a measurement where, you're not splitting them, but you can actually record them. And if you're not watching it, if a machine is recording it, it will show the photon in two different places. It's again, like the ball. It's
the
everywhere.
Double slit experiment, that's called,
Yeah,
I believe.
it's everywhere and nowhere at the same time kind of, thing. But if you consciousness watch it, it lines up. So human consciousness snaps it into shape. And so this is what's fascinating about this is we've got Newton's laws, which pretty much work with us on a day-to-day basis, and consciousness pretty much affects. But then we've got the string theory, quantum physics laws, which actually do some strange things. So let me bring this to another level. We know how an X-ray works, right? So when someone is being X-rayed, how they came up with that was somebody was just making a better light bulb from Edison, and it was quite by accident. What he did is we made kind of a cathode and anode, and you shoot the light through, and then it bounces back through, kind of like a mirror. And when it comes back into itself, it excites the electrons to 10 million vibrations a second, and we can see through solid matter, humans. But we had someone propose, if 10 million vibrations a second lets you see through solid and human, what does it take to see everything else? And it goes back to this theory of the speed of light. And so here's the thing is, Stuart Hameroff, who's an anesthesiologist, said that within our brains, neurons are pretty wet and slow, but that's where all the memories are. But inside them is a structure like a skeleton, a bony structure, kind of like your computer. And within those little structures are microtubules that actually vibrate at a trillionth of a second. And that is where the spirit and the consciousness is. And when you're under anesthesia, you lose a connection between your spirit and body, which is why people who are going into operations can actually go 12 hours in surgery, and the anesthesiologist will be standing there and they'll be saying, I've changed my mind. I don't want to go under. It's like, you've gone under. What do you mean I've gone under? You've had the surgery. No, I haven't. You cannot convince them because they've lost their spirit and their physical body have separated from each other, and they have no consciousness of what happened to the body. And so it is this thing that goes back to looking at this vibration of being able to see, and it goes into all these different elements. And so I would highly recommend reading Stuart Hameroff, who's an MD, and his thought about the spirit and the physical through our brains. And that actually might be where off storage is. We literally might keep a lot of our memories actually in another dimension. I know this is getting kind of weird, but it's like a rose. Really, where in your brain, right now I mentioned a rose, and all of you listening and stuff, you can see a red rose, you can smell the rose, maybe it's a white rose, but everybody knows what a rose is. There is a roseness that we all know. But where is that in your brain? Where is shame? Where is basically those feelings? And yet they're there. It's almost like through the microtubules, you can actually store all that stuff infinitely elsewhere, and it's not touchable. But it's easy, like a storage unit, to gather back as you want because of this connection. So just that's my little freakiness, because it is pretty cool.
Well, actually,
definitely.
I think you hit the nail on the head there when you're talking about vibrations, which really we're talking about frequency. And this is something I've talked to Ryan forever about this, because
Yes.
being a musician and a producer and stuff like that, I'm always... I mean, it's all frequency. It's like what lives in this frequency, what lives in that frequency. And I often use analogies. Like, I mean, if a bird sees the sky and it's purple, it's violet. And that's because they can see ultraviolet light. Just as there's infrasonic light, and there's... I'm probably messing stuff up here.
It's infrared light, infrasonic sound.
There you go. I knew I had something messed up there. But anyway, you know what I mean. It's basically a spectrum of light that is we can't sense it. We don't have the hardware in our bodies to sense this stuff. Now we got...
Well, we do, but we haven't attuned to it, because our brains are pretty amazing.
That's
and
true.
We just might not be tapping into it. But you're right. We can't on a day. We've got to cut out all that crap just to survive.
That's true. So now imagine... dimensions. Okay, so we're in a 3D dimension. Now, if I seen this on someone else's, I think it was TV or a documentary, but it was really interesting, because what he did was, he had this sculpture. Now, if you picture a sculpture, I mean, like, let's just say it was a lawn gnome for the sake of argument. Okay.
We all know what a lawn gnomeness is. Now, mine might have a blue hat and yours might have a red hat, but there is a gnomeness.
Yes, we have a gnome. We have a gnomeness. So we have a lawn gnome, and now let's imagine that the bottom of this lawn gnome has a circular base. Is exactly circular. So when we look at this thing, it is exactly... Yeah, it's a lawn gnome. But if you put it on a piece of paper and traced it, now you're in the 2 dimensions. You're only going in 1 dimension around this thing, and you're just getting a circle.
Right.
That's all that can exist of that in the second dimension. So
in the 2 dimension, yeah, right. So you lose a lot of the information.
Yeah. So going back to the shadow men, what if they are another form of almost like human in a different dimension that overlaps our own? That I
like your analogy. So we just see the outline.
Yeah, we're just seeing parts of whatever this thing is. We're not getting the whole picture. It could be anything, right? It could be another creature's shadow, and that's all we're seeing because they can't exist in our dimension.
Now, Jason, there was another question. I was curious to ask you. Was there any seminal point? Was there any moment that really made you sit up and believe that the box housed not just a force but an intelligence?
I think it is. And if you remember chapter 10, when my mother-in-law was like, is this thing safe? Blah, 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 as mothers-in-laws do. Not worried about me, but is my daughter safe? Are my grandchildren safe? Because they carry my blood. You don't carry any of my blood. So if you want to dabble in this thing and you end up dead one morning, tough luck. But not my blood, And so, but what's weird is that a situation occurred which, how could anything about the Holocaust have anything to do with Kirksville, Missouri? And yet, could you believe that Hitler could have had a mentor, and that mentor could have been passing laws that while he was in prison after his first failed coup, and he realized that, when you lead a bunch of beer hall men, that was his little group, to have a rebellion, bunch of drunks at night don't make much good in the daytime. And so he was sitting in prison thinking, what works if I wanted to build a band? And he looks to America and sees laws and things going on saying, that's what I want. And he writes his book and he follows that thing and he brings this man over and they become buddies and he gives him a degree from Heidelberg and he takes his brother and lets him do a surgery residency. All this connection. This guy mentors to some degree Hitler, only Hitler takes his ideas, as most youthful students do, and blows it up bigger than ever. But he even says Hitler's doing better at our own game. And so you've got this weird thing. Who would have thought that there could be a connection? And that's when I started questioning what is going on with this thing, because you can only have so many coincidences before they start layering so deeply that something is going on. It's like chaos. You get far enough away and chaos becomes order. So what's going on with this thing? So I do think there is an energy, a spirit. And I do think if we open ourselves and watch, it will reveal itself.
And to add to that, actually, you're speaking of a consciousness in the box. And I think one of the details in the book that really kind of reaffirms that is when I believe Kevin had someone working at a store and his brother showed up. It was like first day since he's been in prison or something like that. Right. And like he wants to go down in this area in the store where he's not allowed, and he's being really obnoxious about it. And so Kevin and someone else ends up having to forcefully remove him. And during this whole thing, this guy grabs, I believe it was a razor edge off a display and lunges at Kevin. He misses, right, but he knocks the box off of the counter, and it falls down. The door is open, and the next day they find this guy and he's hung, right? I mean,
he literally has his hoodie pulled over his head with his belt around his neck, and they claim it's a suicide.
Yeah. So, I mean, to me, this as you put in your box, I mean, as you put in your book, is the box's way of, enacting.
Don't mess with me.
Yeah, like, that to me is a consciousness. That's an intelligent response to being threatened.
A scary one.
I don't know if I've told you guys that, so again, it's been sealed, which it creates this really beautiful, wonderful scent, almost because it wants you to bring it out. And it is, just thinking about it makes me want to just pull that puppy out and take a good whiff of it. Because, I mean, it's such an addictive, pleasing scent. And so I think it produced this whole new smell that it never had once it was sealed and knew that it couldn't really do any harm in the acacia arc of gold. So the funny thing about that is we kept it for 5 years, pretty much neutralized. And once, just before the movie came out, I thought, you know what? There's going to be a lot of strange, weird people wanting this thing. So it's time to bury it. I've prevented doing it, but something has to happen now. And buried it and had dinner. And after dinner, we always take our scraps out to the field because Why put them in the garbage disposal? Why throw them away? Just give them to the animals. And so we often tricky trot out at night, throw the scraps to the animals, and come back in. And my wife happened, because I cooked the meal, she was going to take the scraps out, not a big deal. But when we woke up in the morning, she realized how close she'd come to death, because the ground had actually opened into a well, a brick lined 30-foot drop well. And had she just deviated 1 foot, she would have probably plunged to her death.
Wow.
30 feet into a well, a water-filled brick-lined well, which I've now since put an 8-foot fence over. But what I'm saying is, it's kind of like you bury it, it's going to bury you. Now again, it's kind of done its thing and now it's calm. But it's like, is that a coincidence? What's kind of going on with this?
Yeah, that's where we get, is where, what is a coincidence anymore? So do you feel now like it's almost like a responsibility to keep this box out of other people's hands? I mean, because it's something you really need to have a lot of knowledge about. And I mean, you've learned this. I mean, you've had this thing for like 7 years, and you've got it quieted down now. But I mean, in the wrong hands,
Well, and that's the thing is, and I don't know what's, good, bad, evil, wrong, right. But the thing is, I just don't think it's ethical to put it out there. The people who want it for all the wrong reasons, I believe. I mean, and the people that have common sense don't want it. And so it is, there's people constantly, I'll take it off your hands. I want to see it, blah, blah, blah. It's like, people usually with issues with power and stuff. It's like, no, the ethical thing is not to put it on display. It really is. It was a private item that was supposed to go with the owner, and it, for whatever reason, never did. I mean, I believe that much of Kevin's story was it really wasn't meant to be out and paraded around. And so my perspective is burying it probably is the best thing. And I know people are like, oh my gosh, all the things have been lost. Look, I said I did everything you want. I filmed it. I documented it. I brought in the best medium, because I wasn't hiding anything. I mean, I don't care. I don't do this stuff. But Lori Campbell, is the medium that's used in Orange County, California, for missing persons and murders, she's the only person in the University of Arizona that scientifically minded persons will work with her to basically prove that there is a spiritual element and a connectivity through spiritual guides and stuff. And so, what I'm saying is I've done everything everyone's asked, and now I'm done with it. I wrote a book so you guys would know about it. I put a website up so you could see it and what the research is. I have nothing to hide. Do your show. It's bottom line is, I've done everything I'm asked, and I'm, again, I think this is the right thing to do. And, who knows? It may resurface at some point, but not through me.
So the movie, I remember reading up a little bit on, I wanted to get an idea of, what they did with this thing. And from what I've read, I believe the stars themselves didn't want to have any actual contact or be around the actual box. Like, it was someone's idea on the set to get this box in.
Well, Sam Raimi, I mean, he's the father of horror. I don't know if you're familiar with Evil Dead and Army of Darkness and
Huge
Grudge
fan.
and Boogeyman. And I would say, here's a man who you think, oh gosh, nothing scares him. He wouldn't be anywhere near it. I met him at the premiere. I mean, he's really an introverted, kind of quiet little guy. And it's just like, he wanted nothing. He made it clear to me, I want nothing to do with that. Now, I'm going to want to do sequels because I am fascinated by it. But being fascinated by it doesn't mean I want to see it,
Now, is that like, was he afraid making the movie? I wonder, like.
No, well, he didn't want he wanted a replica. He actually used the replica to raise $12 million, but he was not going to have the real thing anywhere. Well, he was going to have it, but someone else was going to house it. And all his friends like, whoa, 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 whoa. If Mr. Raimi doesn't want it, let me think a minute. No, I don't think so.
Yeah, that's wise advice. I don't think I'd want it. Well, honestly, I mean, after everything that I've heard, as curious as I am, I actually don't think I'd want to.
But you never know.
But you never know.
Hey, I was like that too. I thought, I really, I put my foot down. I didn't want it. And then I let someone sweet talk me who, well, we need this for a little haunted tour walk and a little illusion. And hey, I'll take care of it. It's like, because I wanted to see it, I let myself get talking. Oh yeah, everything will be fine, and it is now. But I'm just saying, yeah, I think I could convince you to take it, Ryan.
So,
I don't know
But
if you have a girlfriend or a wife or whatever, but I'm saying, here's the thing: women vehemently want nothing to do with it, but women are smarter than men anyway. So
yeah.
and usually more in tune that
they are. That's what
women's
I'm saying. It's their sense,
intuition.
yeah, their intuition and their sensitivity. And what I'm saying is, I've yet to find a woman who said, "Yeah, we'll take it, no problem."
Yeah.
Guys, sure. Women are like, "Don't you even think about it."
Yeah, that's like my wife. I'm actually jealous of her because she has a little bit more paranormal experiences happen to her, and she's not even really interested in it. And here I am, almost begging to go to a haunted castle somewhere, and nothing. Right, Bubkiss. I got to talk to everyone else about it. So, yeah, I think she would not let me have that box.
So
Oh,
I
that
guess
one, and you read in the book about Steve Moss, and this guy was basically the president of the Long Island Paranormal Society, reestablished, and when they moved to North Carolina, the whole thing again, and it was just like they had gone on all these tours, and his wife was, I put my foot down. This will not, and it was such, again, that hollowness, that emptiness. He lived vicariously through every other owner, and yet he knows it's one thing that he cannot have. It would destroy his marriage. And it's really funny almost, because here is a person with a passion, and yet he respects his wife enough that she says, no, I know you, and you're going to trust me on this one. You're not going to get that thing. So
So, have you ever had animals around the box? Because animals are pretty in tune as well.
well, here's the thing: is we ended up with a stray dog. We're not into dogs, but we live out in the country far enough that people dump their dogs, and typically a handful of rocks will run them off to the next place, and we're done with it. I mean, that's it. And so about 4 years ago, I just painted. We live in a Victorian Queen Anne with a turret, brick with beautiful gingerbread. I mean, it really is a wonderful historic home. And I just painted the turret, and I was admiring the job. And as I looked down on the porch, there was a dog. And obviously a dog that had been out for quite some time, matted hair, nasty. It's like, and I thought, and I went to get a rock, and that dog looked at me like, oh, what am I going to do? And I couldn't do what I normally had done for the last 20 years, was chase it off. And so I went and cooked a steak and gave it the scraps. And so this dog was well trained. It stayed on its pillow. We had a pillow upstairs and downstairs. It never was in the house except to be on its pillows. It didn't loiter around. It knew here or there. Well trained. I really loved it. Didn't bark. Didn't do anything. So we really enjoyed this dog. We called it Poopsie, and just Poops. And so she became part of our family. When I was photographing the pictures for the book, my son and I had to get the box out, and she became curious because it does have this weird scent. And she walked up into the den, where my office is, and she stuck her nose in it. And my son and I, whatever. But then she yelped as if someone had just kicked her.
Ah,
And kind of like, remember I told you when I felt like someone had taken a knife and was ripping through me? She yelped. She stuck her nose in it and she yelped. And
wow.
she started panicking to get away from it. And the funny, I mean, my son and I were kind of laughing because her paws were sliding on the wood, because the harder she tried to get away, she was just fumbling and falling and couldn't get any traction. Because if she just stopped and trotted off, she'd have been fine. But in her panic, she literally was stuck. And finally, she gets away from it. She goes down to her pillow and she watches it. But here's the weird thing. She then, over the period of the next couple of weeks, starts to age quickly. And she gets what is called dysplasia. She
hip
literally can no
dysplasia.
longer walk. Hip dysplasia. She can't walk. She can't eat. She's vomiting. And basically, we ended up having to put her to sleep. She just became a complete invalid.
Wow.
And I'm just saying that's the only thing I can speak of from an animal's perspective. And it was kind of sad because we're not dog people and we're not going to get another one, but we miss our little poops.
And well, I mean, I think that's pretty conclusive there
Yeah.
in terms of how do animals react to the box.
Well, she thought she wanted near it until she stuck her nose in it, and then yeah, she would not come, even as she slowly degenerates, she would never come back in that room.
So just as that box was a trap for Dibbuk, it's almost like the Dybbuk in the box is a trap itself, in that it allures you to it and then it traps you. So, I mean, one of the interesting things that you pointed out in the book, I mean, was that, just as this box had come into Kevin's life, before this came into his life, he had he was a gold medalist skater. His family was good. He had this business, and
Yeah, restaurant entrepreneur. I mean, he truly, all the things he said, you can research. He really did. He was a golden boy. And then everything, and his mother said everything changed. His shop was successful, was expanding. And then basically his lease was summarily dismissed, and all of this just went away.
so he loses everything. His life is now almost in ruin in comparison. And I mean, it's amazing because, I mean, this is a real life story, and to me, it's reminding me almost of like a Stephen King book, like It. These kids lived in well, it was a fictitious place, Maine. It was Derry, Maine, and they're all there, and they have this big thing with the clown. But when they get older, all of them except one of them, I think there are 7 of them, so 6 of them move away. They're unusually successful in life, but the one who stays behind, he's like hardly making paycheck to paycheck. He's aged really terribly, and all of these things. So like the difference is that is almost like the box is like that place, like if you're with that box, ruin, right? Everything's gone. But if you're not with the box, just as you were mentioning earlier, like after you would seal it and stuff like that, is as if you never aged. It's you're
Yeah, it's
doing.
yeah, doing quite well, really. I'm living a nice life, but it's not crazy, but get to do fun things. But here's the funny thing is, for Kevin, that's never actually, it's never, even with all of this, it's never gotten any better for him.
Yeah, and I think that directly goes back to almost like what we were theorizing, that Kevin's involvement with the box is more than anyone
It's
knows.
it's an albatross.
Yeah,
That's what it's truly, an albatross to him.
yeah,
I got a lot of when I was going through the book, and afterwards, near the end, where you're going through, you're trying to sort out all the different stories, everything that you're hearing, you're trying to make sense of it, and I mean, as as a reader, we're trying to make sense of it with you, as we go along for this ride, and afterwards, I found myself thinking, is it possible that the box was involved in somehow in almost discrediting Kevin, with the different stories from the different family members, all the things, the strange way that his shop was just rushed by police, had his stuff taken, and then 6 months later with the a scant little apology. I mean, it all seemed so very wishy-washy. But when you really got into it, you did discover that it was all true.
Oh, that was
but
the
on
one.
the surface,
Yeah, that's where I knew he nailed him. I said, "Oh my gosh, there is no way, 40 or 50." I mean, in the way he was, I said, you really set yourself up to be debunked. There is no way this could have happened, and he didn't understand it. He truly didn't understand it. And then with my ability to dig through, it's like, oh my gosh, this really probably did happen. Because it had happened before at that very same shop. But that's where the mistake was. And so it is funny to find things out about people that they don't even know. And that's what I'm saying, is he just doesn't get it sometimes.
So what's the scariest thing that you know of related to the box that's happened?
Well, the earth opening up and trying to suck us down into it. No, it's just like, aside from that, no, I'm just saying the illnesses, because it truly was a lot, because I've always been a healthy person. Our family's healthy. My parents are living and all my siblings are living. We're very healthy people. And having the feeling of losing my health is what panicked me and got me to try to figure the thing out. And it's almost as if it knows what your weakness is. And in my case, it was always having good health, is basically not ever thinking about it. And suddenly feeling that not being able to rest, not being able to sleep, not having any peace, panic me. So,
That's a a good point. Actually, Ryan's just messaging. Ryan, did you message me?
Oh, they might have hit my keyboard there. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Uh, there's so many little individual things. I guess that individually, if you take them, you could say a coincidence or oh, that's strange or whatever. But I think collectively, the story of the Dibbuk Box, starting with Kevin and his tale, and then eventually going right back to 1930 and coming up to current times, all together with everybody's accounts. I think if anybody takes anything away from the story of the Dibbuk Box, is that there is a spirit world. There's an unseen world that we live amidst.
Well, the unfortunate thing is, like, I mean, anybody who hears that much proof, there's too much to ignore. I mean, there's definitely something with that box. It's definitely something real. But for a lot of people, unfortunately, especially if you're skeptic, it's almost like they need to experience it firsthand. And unfortunately for people like that, dealing with things like the Dibbuk Box is not something that you want to deal with firsthand. So, that's just the world we live in. I mean, you could have a video of anything, and it's CGI. They faked it.
We really are. We're such doubting Thomases when it comes to, even if we stick our hand in this Christ, like, but are you sure you're Jesus? It's not,
Yeah.
And I have to remember to use, when I use things like it's an albatross, from the rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, this guy kills this bird, and as his punishment, he has to wear it around his neck till it finally falls off. Who wants to wear a dead bird around, especially a big dead bird? And so when I say it's an albatross to Kevin, it's that story. But the thing about it is I begin the story with, interesting enough, when I was talking to rabbis, and rabbis are wise old men, and I said, hey, why me? I'm a Methodist boy. It's like, well, first of all, we don't believe in accidents. So whatever you want to say about the Dibbuk Box really doesn't matter, because there are no accidents. Everything has a purpose. We may not know it, but there is a purpose. If you laugh at God, and if Kevin went to laugh at God with this thing, don't be surprised if God laughs back even harder. And so this is the why rabbis and Jewish people don't typically worry about the Dibbuk Box, because they believe firsthand there are things we don't know about, but we do believe everything falls into place. And so don't worry about the Dibbuk Box. It is what it is, and it has its purpose. You may never know it, but it has its purpose, and we're not going to worry about it. You may discover its purpose, you may not, but it does have one. So that's why I begin with that quote from the rabbi in Sheffield, England. So
Yeah.
Well, I think that, live and let live. Respect it for what it is, right? I mean, if there's one thing I learned from reading the book, is that I'm not even going to pretend to diss it after, who knows? I wish it well,
That's funny. Well, way to go, Will.
and I think when all is said and done, I don't think there's anybody who could argue that the box could have found a better or first a more qualified or a more dogged custodian. 'Cause, I mean, you have all the credentials required to look after an artifact like that. And you had the will and the determination to really dig and find the story. And if it really comes down to the Kirksville connection to the Holocaust and Hitler and the whole thing, you tease those details out, and I you were thorough. You were quite thorough, sir.
Jeez, Jason, you could be an investigator, honestly. Like after reading this, I mean, you could go around in a van solving mysteries.
The mystery machine.
Yeah, because I
and I got Shaggy. All I have to do is call him up Shaggy.
There you go.
Stop the bar
Scooby-Doo.
business and Come with me. I lost Scooby. Poops is gone, but we could dig her up. I think there's a cemetery near my
There's a
house,
pet
and if I
cemetery.
plant her wisely, we might get Poops back. But
Now
Stephen King.
we've been warned about that. They'll come back sour.
But you guys have been great. It's been fun chatting with you. I wish you guys the best. Goggs is a great guy. I like Gordon. I hope our paths cross again because really enjoyed my time in Scotland with him. My background is Scottish, by the way. A lot of you guys, you Canucks, come from Scottish descent too. So Haxton is a Scottish name, and we got run out because of religious persecution. We didn't want to be Catholic, and Protestants weren't in favor at the time. So our family left and came to the States. So but I do get along quite well with the Scots and New Zealanders. Most of them are Scots too. So it's been fun being on your show. And again, I still say I'm still teasing out details. It's not done. But with a true dilemma, and this is what I will tell you, just give it time and it will resolve itself. When you really don't know what to do, don't do anything. And eventually something will happen. Time, not doing anything is a choice. And in this case, a lot of it was giving it the time for the things. And every time I got into a corner and thought, okay, it's dead ended, something would happen by just giving it a little space and a new element would come out. And I think I have really kind of cornered it, which is why I think it deserves its rest. It really is, and I'm not burying it because I think the mystery is yet to be solved. I think it's done and it's solved, and I'm quite comfortable putting it away for fear that in the wrong hands, it may start up and cause trouble again. Not that someone can't create their own Dibbuk box. I'm just saying this one has done its job and let it rest.
Yes.
Well, Jason, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today. We really appreciate your time tonight. I think you made the personally, I believe you made the right decision in sealing and subsequently burying the box. I think it's probably the most respectful and intelligent, moral decision that somebody could have made. Will?
Yeah, Jason, I want to thank you. I can't even express it. Thank you so much for coming on to our show. It's been really exciting. I loved your book. I was glad to actually be able to discuss these things. I mean, from the horse's mouth. It's been really, really awesome. And I want to thank again Gordon McKay, Goggs, for making this happen. And I do hope our paths cross again. And I wish you the best of luck.
Well, here's the thing: is you guys got the right accent. You guys are fun. You're intelligent. You know what you're talking about. I'd say, Ben Grundy and Aaron Wright, you better watch out on Mysterious Universe. You got two Canadians that are going to take you off the top spot.
Well, I'm flattered. Very flattered. So, Jason, I wish you the best of luck. I mean, I'm very interested in anything else you want to cover with the box. I mean, I'm a big fan now. I'd love to be kept up to date if you ever feel like sending any.
Well, we'll do another show. Hey, like I said, with Mysterious Universe, we've done about 4 or 5 shows, and every time there's something new, and we have a good time. They're enjoyable people. You guys too, Ryan and Will, would love to come back. In 6 months or so when you're famous and everybody's listening, and then we'll do it again. Okay.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, man. You have a good one.
All right. Bye.
See you.
Bye.
Yeah, so for everybody listening, I hope you enjoyed that episode. And of course, if you have any paranormal stories, pictures, movies, whatever it is, if it's paranormal, we want it. And you can send that to will@effedupstories.com
or ryan@effedupstories.com. Really don't hesitate, guys. We're interested to hear what you have and what you've seen and what you know. And thanks so much for joining us tonight.
And again, just to point out, this whole thing was a suggestion from Gordon McKay, so we do listen. If you got a topic you'd like us to do a show on, just let us know, and we'll do it. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you later.
Good night.